Hi, welcome to the Pints Polishing Podcast. I'm Marshall. That's Nick. You can find us at hyperCLEANstore.com. You want to go look and, check out the products and stuff. Great place to go. You want to go interact. Come over to the hyperCLEAN Specialist group on Facebook, and you'll get to interact with us both there. And hey, go in and throw a picture. Talk about some of the work you're doing, maybe what a cool car you have. Great place to interact and be a part. Nick, let's do some buy and sell. I am, unfortunate, Nick. It's very unfortunate. I'm selling. And I hate to do it. And I hated to do it especially after starting off such a great day, walking out of Target, and you probably haven't got to see it yet. But did you know there's a golden duck? Now there's a golden duck, and I saw one.
Oh, my God.
Sitting on a Jeep dash. It stood about 8 inches tall. Big, stout dude. You could tell he was proud, man. Big, nice golden duck. And I was so thrilled. And I hate to sell what transpired. What transpired was us being late to a game, us being in a rush, and us sitting then at a train stop, waiting for the train to go across the road. We're half a mile away from being there, and this train won't let us go. What do? Do you go figure out if you can go around or go reverse? So we're sitting there for minutes, right? So then the starts ticking, right? Everybody knows that moment. And you start getting a little bit more irritated. And finally, you want to bounce. And I start looking around and I go, wait a second. That dude's sitting in the passenger seat. That's something that I was told has been happening. It's not really real, is it? I look backwards. Holy crap. Another one. How many dudes are sitting in the passenger seat while their girl drives the car?
Oh, yeah.
I'm selling. Whoever you are, you're gone. I can't believe it is really true. Somebody told me about it. It seems to be a thing, growing and growing. Until I saw it firsthand, I go, you're out. You're sold. Gone.
Yeah, man card gone. I don't know. It definitely has picked up steam. I don't know what it's about, to tell you the truth. I don't like anyone really driving me around. I guess it's different if you're in an executive car or you have a set driver that takes you around. But your girl driving you around was a big no-no. But you might get in trouble with some of the new crowd. They don't take too kindly to these types of conversations. But I'm with you. It just seems kind of weird. The duck and the Jeep thing. Let's be fair. Somebody needs to step up in the Jeep community and say, we just have too many different things we're calling Jeep, so we're just done with it. It was cool when there was real Jeep people. It's corny now. That's what I thought you were selling. I thought you were selling the, gold duck or whatever this idiot had in there. But evidently this guy had more problems. But I think the gold duck is a little bit of a precursor to what you ended up seeing, and it's like, I don't know, man. The duck thing is stupid. Got to be done with it. I'm gonna buy. I went to the in-season championship game for the NBA. They had it here. LeBron, Halliburton. It was Anthony Davis. It was great. I'll still say this: a top flight NBA or NHL game trumps an NFL game in person. Hard to kind of catch all the action in an NFL game. NHL still probably the top, but going and watching it, LeBron's been doing it now. I remember watching him in high school live because, I grew up in Ohio where he was. To see that he's like 38 years old now and still dominant is like the wildest thing to ever see, because I remember when he was 16 years old. But getting to see it live, getting to be a part of it, I'll still say, you don't get those opportunities, right? It's like going to a championship fight. Anytime you can go to a championship and you can watch somebody that's great at what they do, you got to take it. So I'm going to buy, that's a fun event. Got to take my daughter, my oldest daughter, so she got to enjoy and, hey, it's too loud in here, hold her ears, got to do all that but it was electric. It was a lot of fun and, kind of a cool thing. First year, they've ever done this. So, I thought it was great. And I'll applaud the NBA for being inventive, saying, hey, we just want to be relevant early in the year when everybody's watching football. I thought it was great.
You're right about LeBron. So I never was a fan of him myself. Like, what he did to Cleveland when he first left and did that big come to the stage and have this big party. And it's like, I'm leaving. I went, ouch. Like,
Yeah,
he will forever be stained for me on that.
But he went back and won a title, right? I mean,
but he went right. I mean, of course, all the Clevelanites, they're going to still fall in love with him because he did it. I get it. And you're right. He's a phenomenon. There's nobody else that will ever be like him. So
no, because he was supposed to be famous. So he's like Tiger Woods. Like, he's the guy that panned out, right? I mean, he was on Sports Illustrated when he was like 14, and he's everything advertised, which I don't think people get real bent out of shape, because they don't agree with somebody politically or whatever. It's like, he's just an athlete. He's 38 years old. He's still gigantic. He's still athletic. He's taking care of himself. He's hardly ever injured. I don't know. He kind of panned out for what he was supposed to be, like Tiger Woods. Forget all the scandal. Tiger Woods panned out after being on, the Dick Van Dyke Show at 5 years old. Like, what are the odds he becomes what he became? And so I like seeing that kind of stuff. You'd only get that kind of thing a couple times in your life where you get to see something, on that level. But yeah, I mean, there's things in his career we could all pick apart. There's no doubt about it. But it was awesome. Like, it was really inventive. They had the championship game here. And I don't know, man. I like when sports try new things. They tried it. It worked. You got to celebrate it. I mean, I'm kind of tired of the same old, to be honest with you.
All right. So speaking of celebrating, I'm getting into some holiday cheer over here. I am drinking Shiner Holiday Cheer. That's actually what it's called. So it's just regular
schnapps?
Amber ale. No, but you're going to love it. It's got peaches and pecans.
Wow.
So
where are peaches that are ripe in the summer festive? Boy, oh boy, you just take liberties in the beer community, huh?
I mean, Texas,
is that peach flavor?
Do.
Is that natural flavors?
Where's Porter peaches? No, that's Oklahoma. There's a part of Texas though that I think is known for her peaches, and they're definitely plenty of pecans down there too. So I don't know, man. Texans are strange, right? We always, no 100%. Matter. Everybody always knows that. All right. So what's strange too is some questions and some stuff going on in the specialist group. We're going to jump right into them, get to them, because as we're celebrating holiday cheer, well, there's somebody that was very festive. While he might have been confused, funny joke of how many brushes to use with his tire shines, he was also, I guess, confused with what was the most popular holiday movie. But can you guess? You saw the big boat, the big wagon Brandon had. He was going to be in a parade. I love what he does. And he takes a big station wagon out. So what's the movie, Nick? What is it? Who'd he team up with?
Vacation.
Are you sure? Is that the only movie that is known for having a wagon in it? There's another popular movie that I think I'm going to stump everybody on. But
Die Hard.
So that was the joke I said, right? Because there's always that. It's the same as Han Solo, Han shot first when they remade it, right? People understand that. It's the same with people say this about Die Hard, is Die Hard's a Christmas movie. It's absolutely not a Christmas movie, but because it was always at Christmas, right? Like they'll push for it. No, here is a Christmas movie that you'll remember. Macaulay Culkin, remember that kid? Home Alone, right? There's two wagons in it. Not only the dad has a memory of him only being in wagons, but Macaulay Culkin walks out to check their cars. What's in the drive? What's in the garage? The exact same wagon. The exact same wagon. So, unfortunately, he wasn't.
You
don't
have a lot going on at Christmas, huh?
Yeah, and he was going with. I was forced. You didn't ever. Come on, you don't remember? I was forced to watch all those movies.
The funny thing is, it wasn't like a big thing in my family. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that like Christmas time. They watch a lot of movies, and
not you.
I was just fortunate. I didn't have. I'm not a movie guy, right? There's certain movies I like, but I was never like raised in a household where my parents were watching movies and stuff. It just wasn't that, and so. I think I kind of dodged a bullet because I think most Christmas movies are
terrible.
Terrible. Like, I know people want to rewrite history, but it's like if you watched them with a new eye, you'd be like, "Oh, this is stupid." Like Christmas Vacation's funny.
Story.
I mean, it's
I loved
definitely
it back in the day, but you go watch it now and you go, "Oh gosh, it's horrible. It's just stupid." But
Yeah.
there is one that we both love, right? Bad Santa. Right? Definitely
Oh,
can
Bad
go with some
Santa's
Bad Santa
hilarious.
every year.
Yeah.
Every
Bad
year.
Santa's a great Christmas movie.
All right, but so Brandon was going as Griswolds, and he puts on a good show, and I love seeing guys trying different things, and he's a guy that
Yeah.
always does try things in his area to kind of stand out, and it's great
agree.
to see what he does. It's great to see what he does. So let's go with what to do, what not to do. Okay, what not to do first. Now, what to do. If you got a big truck, Dustin loves Infinite Shine, right? Love it, man.
Great
Dustin,
move.
great. Great move. Love it. Perfect. What not to do, Dustin? Spray it and drive off.
he said he had no problem. He said he had no problem. Hey, not my move, not your move, not most of our moves, but if he says there's no sling, hey, he's got a good application process. I'm going to root that on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still going with what not to do. Unless that's just a Dodge truck guy, I guess. That's the typical move, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. Okay, so here's a good one. Love this one. Was Pig Daddy right or wrong? Love to see that little post. Pig Daddy had a fuel pump go out on his. Listen, dude, I'm right there with you. As I told you earlier, I'm working on the Wagoneer this weekend. Think that it's a fuel pump problem. I'm trying to figure things out. Well, he got his fuel pump. He had a problem. What did he do? He hopped in a Jeep, threw the magnets on the side, put his trailer on, and away he goes, man. What do you think
Real
about
Jeep.
that? What I loved about it was the guy with the Gladiator going, yeah, both of you, watch me. And he's got the Gladiator pulling the trailer.
Yeah, no, I love when guys just get it done. You had something happen. Now you got to make a move, right? It was cool to see that he actually has a real Jeep, which is nice. Nice 2-door Jeep. Look, hard top. You're getting in a strange spot with if that's a real Jeep or not. Okay. That it's tough.
Wow, real
okay?
Jeep guy's pretty picky, isn't he?
Well, real Jeeps, again, go back to square headlight Jeeps. It was gauges, hardly any carpet on the interior.
Yeah, no carpet.
And, a soft top. And so hard tops, what people don't realize, those were pretty late in the game. Hard
those soft
tops
tops are so loud. Oh,
hey, I'm just telling you, Jeep culture. You're supposed to be roughing it. You're supposed to be, hey, we're minimalists, anything but minimalist now. As we know with, I drove yours around and it's got Bluetooth and hey, not where I started. I've always been a Jeep purist. I go back to the square headlight days, and that is a day, just so everybody knows in Jeep culture. If you're square headlights, you're an OG. I think I can make this judgment. Marty, you were not OG. That's why you are talking about gold duckies and whatever.
it's true.
So, hey, hard top is a little. You can get away with it if you're in a really cold climate, but it's still on the edge of I got to give you a little shit over it. I mean,
Absolutely, because I couldn't afford a Jeep when I was young. I couldn't.
Well, couldn't detail very well. I mean, my detail skills were off the hook early. So I was trying to make some money.
That's my point about roughing it. You're talking about how it's rough. Like, even Jeeps back then were still expensive. And the amount of stuff that my friends put into their Jeep, I mean, you had to have some serious coin to own a Jeep in high school. And to really deck it out.
I think my used Jeep was maybe $3,500, something like that. My first Jeep.
That was a good deal.
$3,500. But look, it was a beater. I had to put some work into it. I think you could find a good Jeep back then, really dialed in, was $7,500. Probably. Something like that. Look, you could get up to the $20,000-$25,000.
Oh yeah, that's
range.
where I was headed. My friends had those.
Yeah. Well, look, I know your friends had those based on the Jeep you have now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't.
I could tell you grew up with the posh crowd. I'm trying to talk about original Jeep dudes. When you're talking about no carpet, just circle gauges, real simple. Jeeps were pretty affordable, but you had to put a little work into them. You're just trying to find one that was rust free at that point.
Yeah.
If you could find one that was rust free, you could make it work. You go back to the old CJ7, those types of ones. Those are still fairly cheap. Actually, I just had somebody buy one for a place they want to keep it and have an old Jeep. Still pretty affordable. I mean, almost a fully tricked out one we found for like 15 grand.
All right.
Everything been
So
redone to it.
when you had to start yours, and here's the interesting thing is I'm having to relearn having to start the Wagoneer. And I actually had to ask people because I'd forgotten, do I need to press the gas all the way down to the ground to start it? Most anybody that listens to this is going, no, what are you crazy? I'm not crazy. It's a mechanical fuel pump. And there's a lot of times you had to do strange things like that because, hey, listen, technology wasn't what it is today.
Yeah, mine acted up in the wintertime and I'd have to give like a little tiny press. I never got to the point where I had to go, full like priming the engine, is what people would call. I didn't have to do that. But yeah, there's several different models depending on how, I mean, especially when you got the Wagoneers of an age that's not out of bounds. You could really have that problem where you kind of have to get some gas rolling through the system and kind of you'll have a starting sequence, so to speak, on some of those older vehicles that work.
Mhm.
I run into that now I got a 2003 Dodge Ram with the Hemi. It really doesn't do well just turning the key. You'll have to get it to like prime the fuel pump and then start it. I mean, that's a 2003. So there are cars and there are Jeeps and there are every car that have a weird starting up sequence where the vehicle just works better.
Definitely. I recall that starting sequence. You're right. Like you start going through what we used to have to do, certain things you'd have to move. Yeah, you're right. Brian wants to know, great question. Love it. Best electric power washer. Wanted some recommendations. Listen, I think you led us in the right direction here at HQ. You picked out a great one.
Yeah. I mean, look, everybody likes the Active, 2.0. It's a nice, reasonably priced unit, right? You could go to Krensla. You could go to a lot of these. You and I were sent some Ryobis back in the day. I'll say this about electric pressure washers. That's not really my world. My world, same for you professionally, is I've always had gas. All my trucks have gas on it. Because we do so much work, it's really the only way to really work. Electric has its problems and it has its benefit. It's definitely much quieter, right? Like that's the no-brainer. But the problem is it's kind of a self-contained unit usually. You can find one like the Active. I think we can pull that pump off if something goes wrong with that pump if we really wanted to. But the fact of the matter is I think you are rolling the dice with electric because gas is still king, right? So if you're going to go electric, I would say get the highest quality one you can afford. I would say that about anything, but we've got the Active there at HQ. I'd have been just as fine ordering a Krensla. I would just be fine, if I'm getting my start of getting a Ryobi just to get me off the ground. If I was hell bent on an electric, but you're going to get what you pay for, man. Guys have the Comet. I think when you're in the group, take everybody's, opinion, order one for yourself and call it a day. I mean, look, I've owned so many pressure washers. I don't vouch for any of them. Like you can get great ones that are gas, you can get bad ones that are gas, and you've had this experience. You've spent a lot of money too and not gotten a quality one. So you kind of just got to go with what people kind of tell you in the group, and hopefully you make the right choice.
Yeah, you're right. I do like that about the one we got because it has some little screws in a sense, and I think they left one of them undone on purpose. Because the first time we turned it on, it starts rattling. I'm like, oh, we got to get that tightened. And then as I started thinking, I was like, I wonder if they did that on purpose so we know that we can move it in and out. Because once I looked at it, it's like, yeah, that's just a pump right there. And you can, here's another place people go. They can go to something like a Northern Tool, a Granger, and you can get something a little bit more, right? More industrial-esque type power washer if you're going to use it more heavily than, just a couple cars a day type of deal. So there's definitely some couple ways, but yeah, the one that we got here that you recommended.
It's nice.
It is nice. It is very nice.
When we used it, it put out a lot of output for that little bit of footprint it has too. I mean, so but you're right. Go to an industrial source. You'll be surprised. You probably have a pressure washer company in your city, that's like, been there 50 years and you never knew about them until you started researching pressure washers in your area. Go talk to them. They'll let you know. I mean, those places are usually pretty good at telling you what to stay away from. Hey, use this one, not that one. You know, they're pretty helpful people.
Mm-hmm. And making sure it turns off is usually the biggest thing. Like, because there
Yeah.
are some that don't want to auto shut off. So,
Agreed.
yeah, that definitely is not having to worry about. All right. This sparked a good conversation about how long it might take somebody. So, love it that Donald said, hey, got a wash, clay, and Uno done on a Friday afternoon. What a great way to finish up. Only took him 2.5 hours. He's chill. Some people are like, wow, right? And then you can go into this conversation. Well, it might take me X amount. It might take me this amount, So, well, wash, clay, Uno. 2.5 hours seems pretty fair to me, but I guess you could shave a little bit here and there. I don't know.
Yeah. Two-man teams, we like to see under an hour and a half. One guy on his own, anywhere from 2 hours to, 2.5, depending on the size of the vehicle, is perfectly okay. The key here is, did you charge for it? Right? So if you're a DIYer listening to this, you don't care if it takes you 3.5 hours because it's your car, right? So take your time. That's the way I would work on my own vehicle. I'm not in a big rush when I'm working on my own vehicle like I am when I'm getting paid. And so you have to define out what is acceptable. If you're charging $300 and you're just getting your start in business and you go, hey man, if I make $300 in 3 hours, my business is doing really well, then that means you got 3 hours to get it done. So every minute below that 3 hours, take it as a positive, keep trying to shave your time down. You'll have it down to 2 hours in no time, right? It doesn't mean, too many guys are worried about, this guy's at this skill level and I'm not. A lot of times efficiency when doing any type of service, as you know, if you were ever to film yourself or when you're watching a team member do it, you look at all the wasted energy. Are you walking around a vehicle multiple times accomplishing nothing? That shaves time if you're doing everything in a perfect process of a circle around the car. Every time you have to stop and go back or go around and not do something, you're wasting minutes. Minutes turn to hours, right? So that's where efficiency comes from, is just realizing when you can accomplish things and not wasting walks around the car, or not just, forgetting where you put something or putting something in an inconvenient place. These are all things that shave time. And I think a lot of people believe like there's some aha moment where you're just magically going to get faster. You're going to get faster from saying, where did I waste time? Because I guarantee you, we all waste time.
Yep.
So you got to figure out where you wasted your time. And you will if you're always looking at it through that lens. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's when I heard you talking. I started thinking about me, right? Like, you're right. I waste a lot of time, not efficient enough in certain things. Listen, we won't go into towels. Let's not go there. Towels have their spot, but
yeah,
there's parts of my process that I wish I could be a little bit more forethoughtful so that I'm not walking back and forth sometimes. Like, it makes sense.
Look, that's the key to efficiency, right? The key to efficiency is you'll watch some guys take care of wheels and tires and you'll be incredibly inefficient. And all of a sudden they spent 40 minutes on wheels and tires when they should have spent 15 minutes, and they would have gotten a more thorough clean doing it in 15 minutes, right? So those are the things you have to analyze, and you have to think through and go, okay, can I kill two birds with one stone with this? Can I do this a little quicker? Where is my truck set up in relation to the car? How do I have it sitting in my shop, and where's everything at in my shop? And do I have everything ready to go? Do I have a central point to walk back to? So if you look at us, our central point's the front of the car. So if I was in the shop, I would have everything set up in the front of the car, because now mentally everybody knows everything is moving around the car back to the front, moving around the car again, I'm back to the front, right? So I'm never walking behind the car with anything I need to do, because I realize I'm walking around the car doing something. And then when I get back to the front, I can reload, or I can grab my next thing or whatever. You follow what I mean? So I don't have things stationed around the car. I have things stationed in the front of the car. So my process is always in a U shape. I'm always doing something walking this way, then I'm doing something walking back the other way. And that's the easiest way to start shaving time, is not trying to set yourself up all around the car, because then you're walking in all different types. So that should help guys cut some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Learn all kinds of new things. Here's something I also learned was you're supposed to wash the underneath and not the carpets. So if you or your customer hits a skunk, right? So we had we had Joshua.
That's a tough break.
Customer. Huh?
That's a tough break.
Right? Hits a skunk, can't figure out how to get the smell out. I'm with most everybody else, and they started talking about the inside of the car, which you are going to need to address because it will have sucked up through, the ventilation. But love that a couple of guys, Brian was one in particular, I think somebody else talked about, hey, go ahead and foam up the underneath, use cleanse, get some TRX under there. You got to get all that from the underneath of the vehicle. Great job. Like, I went, love it, because I wouldn't have thought about it.
I'll give you another one, because I lived in a very country area growing up. When I first started detailing, guys would hit things like deer and things like that. It was like big in my area. Somebody's going to have to crawl up under there and make sure none of the skunk is left under the car. We actually had this happen on a Bentley once. I'll never forget this smell as long as I live. I'm in Vegas. We've been taking care of this Bentley GT. Never an issue. It always smells the same, hardly driven. I get in there, it smells like a dead body in this thing. I'm like, what?
And it's Vegas. You can't say anything,
yeah,
right?
I was like, what is going on? I was like, what is going on here? So we clean, go through the ventilation. We do everything. We can't get the smell out. It taught me. We then had to go through all the little engine areas, and we found a dead mouse. It was actually still in the engine. The minute we removed it, the smell was gone. Right? So make sure, and this kind of sucks because I'm sure you're in an area that it's not so warm, get it in a garage. If somebody has access to a lift, a mechanic, all the advice about spraying off and cleaning the underneath, that's great advice. I'd also say you have to make sure there's no body parts from that skunk underneath that car, because you could do everything and still be screwed, kind of. And I've learned that lesson a few times. I had some situations with some deer in my hometown. I had a mouse out here that was lodged into an engine and dead. I mean, smells just come down to, are you getting rid of the root of the smell? It could be the animal still under the car.
All right. So, Keith, this was a cool post. Put dose on Rivian. Right? Love it.
Oh, yeah.
He recently grabbed some of our products, and I think they did a little YouTube video with him and his daughter and some stuff, smelling products, cool little family. It's great to see what they're doing. And I go, hey, we're going to finally have a showdown one of these days. We've got Rivian, right? We've got Tesla, right? We've got all the other manufacturers. The community pub, one day, we're going to have everybody on there. And we're going to throw it down. We're going to throw down the electric car debate.
Yeah. I mean, look, Rivian's building the nicest electric car, but they're also losing like $50,000 a car. So it's like, will they be around? I mean, Rivian's probably realistically building a $150,000 machine that in some cases guys are picking up for $75,000. I mean, there's a problem. Now they got Saudi money and, this money and that money and this person's money. And, who knows where their money's coming from at times. They're great cars. I mean, great trucks, great SUVs. I love them. I mean, they're great vehicles. They have everything figured out. They got things in the back of the bed. You can buy a whole grill kit for the truck in between the rear cab and the bed. You can pull out an entire grill setup. Just right out the side. I mean, I'm in. But I think the question's going to be who is sustainable. And right now, we only have proof that one company is sustainable on electric, and that's Tesla. Everyone else is not sustainable. Ford's admitted they're not sustainable. Rivian's definitely economically not sustainable. Lucid's not sustainable. I'm just curious where this is all going to go, because sooner or later, I think we're going to end up in the hybrid world, where everybody's making some type of hybrid, which always has made the most sense. Find a way to get 70, 80 miles a gallon and let's call it good. Seems like that's where we're probably going to settle here.
I agree. Well, Keva, once we get that date, you can come in and we'll settle the debate in the community pub
Oh
too.
yeah, he's
So,
at Lucid, right?
yeah,
Yeah, Lucids are nice, man. They're really nice.
they are. They are. So, all right, let's get over to the final thought, and we all want to know, Nick. I mean, are you going to wear the sweater like Billy? I mean, of all the sweaters, if Billy sends it to you,
Wow,
you going to wear it and take a photo for us? Is this going to be?
Is there anything that hurts your eyes quite like that Miata sweater? I mean, I had to say something. I had to say something. I mean, we love Billy. Billy's our guy, but buddy, you can't wear a Miata sweater. You can't have it.
I'm
I know
not.
he's going to say he's taking shot. We're not taking shots. I'm just saying can't have the Miata sweater. I think he showed a BMW sweater. He's like, hey, you should wear this. I'm good on the sweater thing. I don't look great in sweaters. Okay, if you can pull them off, great. Not my look. I don't have it in me to pull off a sweater. So,
Well, I mean, just some people just don't know when to ask for help. Which I think is what Billy was doing. Really, I think he was ultimately like, "Hey, I need help here." People give me some advice. Ugly sweaters, Billy. You will win that challenge every Christmas party. Go for it. But speaking of people that don't necessarily understand when to reach out for help, it's kind of an interesting thing because we've in the past have kind of started to say help isn't really what we should be doing, right? There was this help of the industry and all that talk that we had recently, and this new theory's kind of come up that you and I've been tossing back and forth is, well, actually, some people don't reach out for help when they should.
yeah.
We should appreciate that Billy reached out for help for getting advice on his sweater, but in realistic terms, I mean, there's plenty of people that don't reach out to help. We've had inner dialogue about some people we work with, people that are close to us that got into a little bit of an issue, didn't take the heads up approach of reaching out to make sure that we could help them to really figure out what we were needing. You've had some customers that you've had some struggles with. I've had customers I've had struggles with. Do we want them to reach out for help? I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference. A lot of guys, if we just keep it to detailing, a lot of guys reach out for help on simplistic things, right? Like, how do I use a foam cannon? Well, you can Google that, right? And that's what all of us should do. You don't really want to bother most people with simplistic questions, and we all know when we have them. I have them every day where I'm trying to figure something out, and Google's your friend. You can figure out a lot of things in life through Google and how something works. I mean, I've been putting baby furniture together, which seems like for the last 3 years of my life. Let me tell you something. I don't have to call a lot of people. I can figure it out. There's a different style of thing that we've realized that, when you fall behind in work, could be a detailer, could be somebody you work with, in any type of industry, there's a time to give somebody a heads up and say, hey, man, I need some help. I've fallen behind. I need some help. I'm not able to complete the work in time. And this happens a lot of time with us as detailers when we know we need an extra day with the car. We need an extra 2 days with the car. But here's what a lot of guys do. They know at noon that 5 o'clock pickup is not happening. And then 2 o'clock comes, and then 4 o'clock comes, and then 5 o'clock comes. The person shows up, and you go, I'm going to need the car an extra day. Then you're going to wonder why that person's not thrilled with you.
Or I have done that, and it's like 30 minutes or 15 minutes, and they're like, well, I'm on my way.
On my way. Yeah. Look, this is not a judgment thing. We've done this, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has done this in business. But when you start to think about how to have a great customer service business, you need to realize that reasonable people don't care that you call them and say, hey, look, it's 1 o'clock. You're supposed to pick your car up at 5. I want to let you know something. I want a little bit more time with the car to do the right thing and get this done right. I'm going to need the car overnight. You can pick it up first thing in the morning. If you think customers are going to have a problem with that, reasonable people don't have a problem with that. Do they have a problem when you call them at 4:45 and they're in traffic on their way to your shop? Yeah, they're probably going to have a problem with that. but it's the context of you called them 15 minutes before pickup. You didn't call them at 1 o'clock. Right. And so we have this weird thing where people are really willing to put their reputation on the line to ask people all these simple things, but they're unwilling on the big issues to pick up the phone and say, hey, can I keep the car for an extra, or can I call you for some really, really detailed business advice on this one issue that I'm having, or whatever the case may be. It seems that people struggle to find the balance of when to reach out and when to say, hey, I need the car an extra, overnight or whatever. That's where I see guys struggle.
Yeah, and then there's also the struggle, not just with the customer, but you're right. Like, we can all get right into that spot, and we can know some of us maybe even as we're listening to the episode, right? Like,
yeah,
that's very the other one too is it's a guy that I've talked about publicly of a guy that I would see at Mobile Tech, a guy that seemed to be, as everybody thought on social, was doing so great, but yet had to close down and go work for somebody. And when I talked to him, he said, I just never knew. Nobody told me. Right. And I go, you were either not asking or you were asking the wrong people. And we come to this point and we go, he most likely probably just wasn't even asking, because he's the type of guy that knows it. He knows what to do. That's why he's going to tell everybody, right?
Yep.
But if there's something that we're struggling with, let's think of big picture of our business. We're suddenly going downhill suddenly, or, I think we talked about this of a question during, what was that? The Ask Me Anything or something, right? Or one of those that we was talking about, somebody was asking what happens when they start going down, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay. So you start doing that. You got to start asking somebody questions, I would think.
Well, that gets into how strong's your network? How much time have you put into your network? We've kind of watched. I think one of the interesting things is more and more guys come into our orbit and do business with us. What we find is they kind of look at what these guys outside themselves are doing in the industry, and they go, why do people keep talking to that guy? Why do people keep thinking that's going to be the answer? Why aren't people catching on? We hear that frustration probably more than anything, you and I personally. Like, guys that have made it, knowing these other guys are not going to help anybody, and you really don't want to take advice from them. So now it's about the network you've developed. Have you really spent time? You're in business for 5 years. Point me to 5 really reputable contacts in or out of detailing, business-wise, that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, man, I got a serious question for you. If the answer is none, a good goal for 2024 is probably going to be, I need to start working on my network, right? I need to get to work on that. If the answer is, here's the 5 names, and you gave the 5 names to a really reputable guy, and they go, dude, those guys aren't reputable at all, you got to start over. So here's where it becomes the problem, not only of getting the guts to ask the right questions, but have you put the work into building a solid network? And for most people, the answer is no to that. I've been guilty of that. There have been times when I first started my business, I didn't have a strong enough network to work through some of my problems, but I had to address that. I knew enough people, but not enough reputable people. So I had to go through the steps of developing relationships. And look, it's time consuming. You got to put some effort into it. But the reality is, like you said, a lot of people never ask the relevant questions, or they're asking the questions of the wrong people, and they're going to lose both ways. And that's just a tough aspect that you sometimes have to learn the hard way in business, or you can learn from, listening to us and the mistakes I've made in my career and you've made in your career. I mean, there's only a couple ways to learn.
Well, you're right. You want to develop the relationship so that you can be able to ask the question. There's a lot of people that skip over the develop the relationship part, and they just want to get to asking the questions. And then they don't understand, which we've talked about in the past, why customer service around the country is so terrible. Because nobody wants to really develop the relationship. They just want answers. Don't really want to go through the work, right? So part of the relationship goes with knowing the process of how to get into the chance, right? Let me unpack that for a second. Here, we have the hyperCLEAN specialist group. It is a great place to go and ask questions. If you're somebody that has a problem, you need to go ask the question around other people who will not insult you, will not laugh at you. It's not that type of place. At the flip side, you need to ask an appropriate question. Don't go lob a, hey, how do I market better? No, you need to walk through the struggles that you have, what you've been doing, and lay yourself out a little bit. The next step up of it is, and this is something where you and I have said, is there's a couple guys we can think of, and we go, hey, these people, they'll ask more questions and they'll talk to more people than any of the others all combined.
Yeah.
Right. So part of after you're involved inside of the community, inside of the group, coming onto the community pub, diving into more questions there, then you get to the level where you go, great, I know enough people. Now I need to really start digging into what I can learn. And that's the next phase of it up. Of there's another phase of this group of people that we see inside of our community, and we go, hey, you guys just simply aren't even asking the questions, and you just think that you know what you're doing. And we're looking at it in the big picture, and we're going, yeah,
Yeah, no, and I think this is the way to kind of look at it, to simplify it for guys. There's a lot of guys that would call somebody out of the blue and ask them for something that they wouldn't even ask a family member. You follow what I mean? It's like, would you call out of the blue a guy that's a so-called friend you've known for 10 years? Would you just call with a rude question out of the blue? You treat your friends better than that. And so you got to think about how you've developed friendships in your life and think of your business relationships as friendships in a sense. Don't treat a business relationship worse than you'd treat a friend, because then nobody's going to want to help you. And you and I've had this, we've had this experience where, somebody's just treated everybody poorly. And we were on the receiving end of the poorly. And then you started talking to other manufacturers and they're like, oh, dude, that guy's brutal. You guys heard from him? So did we. That's how he treated us. So when we say things get around, they absolutely get around. But I think the way to think of it is, most of us, anybody listening and myself, you treat your family and your friends with a certain level of respect. Now, you may joke around with them and say some inappropriate stuff to your friends. I get that. That's not what we're talking about. You treat your friends with a level of respect, but you don't treat business associates with that level. So you friend them on Facebook and you immediately send them a question. Well, you wouldn't do that to your friend. You'd be like, man, how's your day? What are you up to? But, you'd have some working up for over a few days to get to the point. But in a business relationship, you go, this guy knows a lot. I mean, I've shared this during COVID. A guy that was supposed to be a real success in our industry sent me the first DM, and the last DM he ever sent me was, hey, can you tell me how to do what you've been doing the last 10 years? I never had talked to the guy before. He just wanted the answers. It's like, he wouldn't treat a family member or a friend like that. And so that's a simplistic way of looking at it, is building a relationship's like building any other relationship in your life. It just happens to have business in it. I spent a lot of time with a famous YouTuber multiple times at SEMA that's never done business with hyperCLEAN. How many hours, Marty, at this point? 6 to 8 hours? Okay. I'm not expecting anything from him, but he's asked me for some, let me get him in behind some closed curtains of some car collections and some things he wants to get in. And I've been happy to oblige, because we spent the 6 to 8 hours shooting the shit. But he's been willing to reach out to me, vice versa. When I'm ready to reach out to him, we now have the relationship built. But I spent from 2019 to now developing that relationship, and I've never asked him for anything. And he only asked me recently about a car collection that he wanted to get into that nobody could get into, that I helped him out with. Right? So this isn't stuff that happens overnight. This isn't stuff that just magically changes your life tomorrow. You got to take the time and develop those relationships. And you got to think about, would I treat my family or friend this way? And I think if a lot of guys look at it through that lens, they're not going to make mistakes in developing relationships.
Yeah. I think relationships are tough for people, though, right? Guys typically don't want to have, God, that's the most common joke, right? And all the ladies listening to her like, hell yeah, dudes don't want relationships. right? Like that's a thing, especially car guys. Car guys know everything. We don't want it, right? We're our own man. So now we're supposed to reach out and build relationships with other people and then learn from other people. And yes, will that be tough? Yeah, it will be. Are there things that even internally, you and we have discussions? Hey, is something going to be tough? Is there a way that we need to really ramp up to think about how we're going to accomplish this? You bet. But how valid are those steps to be able to go out and start a relationship? Because how valid would it be with this guy? Well, he'd still be in business. I know that.
Yep.
Well, that's where he'd be. He'd be more like the people that have reached out to us that have now come alongside and now are setting records inside of their own business, who are now going to far beyond they ever thought that they could. And there is a correct process.
Yeah, but you also got to be, we undervalue being a good dude. We undervalue that. Everyone who's made it can tell if somebody's trying to take advantage and just reaching out for themselves and they're not really interested in things. I mean, you and I have been invited to weddings. You and I have been invited to bachelor parties of people we've hardly met, multiple from all over the country. It's not because we're jerks. It's like, solid people know solid people. And there's a certain way you act. You don't always walk in the biggest, shop on the block and ask for the sale 5 seconds into meeting somebody. You take the time, you build a relationship, and it's a lot of work. And let me tell you, it's a lot of work you're technically not being paid for. And I think that's where guys get hung up. Because this is my business. I should get the answer from this person or this company or this individual right now because I spent $3 with them. Now you see why phone numbers don't exist. Now you see why you got to email everybody. Now you got to see why this. Now everything is a result of the selfish consumer instead of the consumer that's just trying to be a good dude. If you're trying to be a good person, man, stuff's going to work out for you. I believe that.
So the part of these conversations that get a little interesting, right? And all detailers can understand this is if you got a customer interaction that you're talking to and they're really, and it's 100% about them wanting a cheaper price.
Yep.
All right. This gets to the point where, hey, if you got somebody reaching out and they're asking questions and you're talking, boy, this person really just wants something that's cheap. This becomes actually the problem inside of a relationship that where it just kind of ends. You recently had a conversation with a customer on your detailing side that was about cheap, and we've all had, right? We can pick up any call and go, yeah, that guy just wants something cheap.
Yeah, and it was worse than that, right? It was know-it-all. I'm cheap and I'm a know-it-all. And I want everybody to hear this from me. I did not handle these things well for a lot of years. One of my big red flags, you know this because you've been on plenty of phone calls with me. I hate know-it-alls. I hate them in my family. I hate them in my friend group. I hate them being around me. It's like a red button for me. I see red when somebody is talking about something they don't know about. Now, we all sit around and have a beer and we bullshit about the game. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in a business setting or in a serious conversation with somebody that has no clue. It's like how everybody was a virologist during COVID. All of a sudden, guys that that flunked like biology in high school were they now have master level degree in virology or now geopolitical stuff. That's why that stuff doesn't interest me because I'm like, I mean, my buddy over here talking about it. I mean, he like flunked 11th grade. What's he know about the Middle East, right? I hate the know-it-all mentality. And to get back to this customer, he wasn't really a price shopper. He was a know-it-all. But then when you started digging into the know-it-all mentality, he had a price in his mind. He had a 67 Corvette, was in very poor shape, that he thought was in great shape, and a Shelby Cobra, two very nice vehicles. And one of the things that came across very quickly is he wanted these to be, in his words, better than the day that I got them. and I want them to be pristine. I'm willing to get these things to pristine finally. This one was just at the engine shop for 2 months. Now I know what that bill runs, anywhere from 20 to 40 grand. Okay, bare minimum probably. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this guy sounds serious, but very quickly, you've had this happen to you, very quickly the tide turns. And so I give him, hey, here's a 2-step correction and coating application. Here's, this one could do with a 1-step and a thorough interior with some steam and get this thing back.
Oh, that's a lot. Wow, does it really need all that?
Well, now you get to, what's that going to cost me?
Mm-hmm.
And to this point, he's great to deal with. And I give him a number that's in the several thousands of dollars. And he goes, whoa, I don't think it needs all that. And so I start backing down my packages, right? I go, okay, well, we have this package and we have this package and we have this option. And by the time I get done, I got 4 different options on the table for both cars. None of them suitable to him. Why? Because when I arrived, he thought he knew everything. He knew exactly what his car needed. So you rewind the clock 10 years, I would have handled this horribly. That's how I know what it looks like to handle it poorly, because I did it. To now, I can just flip it on him, Marty, and say something really simple. Why don't you tell me what you want exactly done to the car, and I'll give you a price on it. And you've been in these situations. What ultimately happens when you do that?
They're usually backing themselves down a little bit, or you find a mutual spot that really works for both of you.
And they also don't know what they need, right? So now they're sitting there, their eyes kind of get a little wider, and they go, well, and they start to like stumble over their words.
Down,
and you go, hey, man, you didn't know I was telling you what you needed. But I also think this comes from a different place. And I have this joke with a lot of guys around the country that send me this because I say it on the podcast all the time. You're not going to get me. You're not going to rip me off. It's like, dude, you got our name from being in this neighborhood for literally over 10 years. Do you really think I rip people off? And all of these people have been with me 10 plus years. But they do believe that. They do believe they're not going to be the sucker. And what they don't realize is his cars look like crap, and they look like crap because he has a mindset of the know-it-all, right? I know what this car needs. And Marty, you know how tough it is. You've been in this situation to back down, put your ego aside, and talk to these people even keeled, because it can get frustrating. I'm speaking for myself, I guess, but I'm asking you. I mean, it gets frustrating for you, right?
You got to take some deep breaths. Right. And you're right. I had to learn it. I lost a lot of people early on when you don't deal with it. You don't have the patience. I think I didn't understand patience. Right. I mean,
and also
in realistic terms,
you get comfort because now you know where it's coming from. The know-it-all behavior in our industry, meaning like a customer,
And I probably was one of the guys that might have been younger thinking I knew quite a bit.
Yeah,
and this
me
guy
too.
was telling me what he knew. And it's like, hey, motherfucker. Like,
yeah, it's 2 know-it-alls, right?
Yeah.
And so now I look at this and I go, it gives me a lot of patience to go, this guy thinks he knows it all, but also this is coming from a price thing. It may not even be a cheap thing, by the way. It could be cheap. But it also could just be he had a number in his head. Unless you said that exact number, he was going to always think there was something wrong. Right? And now with the internet, everybody from the age of 15 to the age of 100 thinks they're an expert on what everybody does. Like you'll see videos on TikTok or Instagram where people are like, well, the plumber came to my house. He charged me $160. Don't you think that's outrageous? It's like, not really. You only think it's outrageous because you don't actually know what you're getting. You don't understand it, but you think you know everything. And so you get to this place, and I think you know this, where there's a lot of freedom in saying you don't have to argue with them. I felt like early in my career, I argued with these people. Mm-hmm. Big mistake. I was an idiot. A big mistake. This is what I can do. If you want something else done, man, you just tell me the service you want. I'll give you a price. The funny thing is when you get to the end of that, they don't know what service to ask for. They don't know what they were thinking because truth be known, they weren't thinking. They didn't have the knowledge, but they were thinking they're going to get showroom level for $50, $100, $500, whatever the number was to them.
All right, but have you gotten to the place where you couldn't actually resolve anything? Listen, I had some spots where I think some people can relate where I got to this customer and they wanted me to use what they had researched and what they had been using, right? And this was Zymol. Remember that? Xylon Brothers or something? There was this. Yeah. And so I had this Porsche customer that's what his name was, Brian. I'll always remember this guy because I had to, in a sense, regularly over time, prove to him that he was wrong. But I couldn't do it from the very start, right? To prove through longevity, and eventually he came around to my theories and the way I operated and took care of customers' cars. But I just started to think while you were saying that, I go, man, I imagine there's some questions between detailers and customers that are getting really interesting around ceramic coatings.
Oh, yeah.
What one finds on the internet, what one believes, what one thinks versus what, if I'm a hyperCLEAN specialist, what I'm going to use, why I use uno, dos, and like, oh, but these people say this. Okay. So when do we get to the point of going, sir, customer, I understand you saw that some guy said that somewhere that they could do this.
Yep.
You just don't really know, right? That's an uncomfortable conversation. Like, yeah, I get it that you saw this, but listen, you just don't really know.
Yeah, I think obviously, you can't say those words because that'd be fighting words. But yeah, you got to find a polite way to say, one of the things that we'll come across from time to time is somebody thinks they can just rinse their car off after they have it ceramic coated. Like they're never going to have to wash it.
Yeah, had that conversation. Yeah.
Okay. So this is when you say very politely, man, I wish it worked like that. That would make my life easier. I really wish what you just showed me and how you want it to work, I wish it worked that way. I mean, that would make my life a million times easier because I could put a ceramic coating on, tell somebody to grab a hose, rinse it off, and their car would be good for the next 5 years. I wish it worked that way. That's the way I approach it, is that I don't try to bash what they say. I always just say, man, because they always tell you something should work really easily. They never say like something difficult. It's always like, this is a really easy thing. It should be able to just rinse off the car and never have to worry about washing. It's like, man, I really wish you were right. That'd be really cool if we get to that place with ceramic coatings. That's not how it works, unfortunately. I wish it did. Like, it'd be awesome for all of us. But, we have particular processes and procedures we use, not only to keep your car looking great, but to get all the dirt and the grime off of it. And this is what we find you have to do. At some point, that's all you can say. You can't go directly at them, but indirectly you back them into your way of doing it. And I found the easiest way is to tell somebody, damn, dude, you're right. If it worked that way, that'd be really easy. Like, that'd make my life awesome and make your life awesome as the owner. Unfortunately, man, the reason you're not seeing the results is that just doesn't work that way. I wish it did. And having a more gentle approach of saying, I'm with you, man. I wish that, we're in this together. Like, I'm rooting for that to be the day we can do that. Today's not that day.
Does it ever happen? At some point you might have to let somebody go, but we don't really want that, right? We don't. So getting to this moment where we give some pushback, I think a cool thing that you and I've talked through is especially if you can kind of reiterate some of the things that they had been saying and how what you do can reinforce what their really main concerns are. And at this point in that conversation might be a good time to do that, right? Like, hey, you remember you were looking for this, this, and this, is this really still what you're mostly wanting?
Yeah. So, let's go back to the gentleman. And I told you after I left that meeting, I was like, just had an interesting meeting. I think this guy'd be calling me back. The key when you're working with these types of individuals that I messed up and why I'm sharing this in my career, you want to leave it on good terms. Does that always happen? Trust me, it doesn't always happen. But your goal should be, okay, I feel like this conversation isn't going anywhere else. I need to remove myself. And there's an easy way to remove yourself. hey, these are the 4 packages I have. If you come up with exactly what you want, go ahead and call me, shoot me a text, an email, whatever's easiest for you, and I'll come up with the price for all that. I'll give you plenty of time to do that. No rush. We don't have to solve this in the next hour. You're going to own these cars for a while. We'd love to work on them. Also, if you think somebody else, fits your needs better as well, I certainly understand. I certainly understand. But what I gave you today is going off exactly like you said, repeat whatever that person said. This is exactly what you said you wanted. I gave you the original price to do that. If you want to step that down, we have the other options I talked about. But it's all good. Just give me a call if you have any questions. And if you have anything, that I can answer, call me. But ultimately, if you figure out exactly what you want, also let's try to book something and then just kind of walk away. At this point in time, you're in a contentious moment for one simple reason, as you know. You have a know-it-all. You feel when the conversation starts to get redundant, you got to get out of there. You got to get out of there. Like in the most polite way, you got to get yourself out of there. Because if you don't, arguments start to ensue. Okay? And then I called you after. I said, this guy did this, and we were talking about it for the episode today. And I said, I bet y'all hear back from him. Thursday afternoon, hey, man, I'd like you to come back out and check out my cars again and go through exactly what I want. Only happens because I left it politely. Because I've left plenty of those not so politely, and nobody ever called me back. So take it from me and my screw-ups early in my career, where now I'm not trying to have an argument. Hey, man, if you know everything, cool. I'm going to tell you my opinion. I'm going to tell you what I would do if this were my car, which is why I always come at it from that direction. And I implore all of you to do that. If this were my car, based on what you just told me, this is what I would do. Because nobody can ever say you're lying about that. Of what you just told me, if I own this car, this is the service I'd get. That's as truthful as you can be with somebody. You know that. I mean, that's as point blank as you can be. And so for me, leaving before things get heated is a skill that I did not have very early on in my career.
All right. Most know-it-all customer owns what vehicle? Corvette, Porsche, or what? What are we going to say?
Corvette and Porsche are pretty big leaders.
Yeah.
Pretty big lead. I know we got a lot of Porsche guys and Corvette guys that listen to us. It comes from, and this again should put people's mind at ease, these guys genuinely love their car, right? And those are two brands that guys are like, staunchly, these are my cars, these are my brands. It's like Ford and Chevy, you know what I mean? Like these are the things that they're always going to be a Porsche guy or always going to be a Vet guy. And we make jokes, and I know guys out there like the joke part, but the reality is if you look at it and go, this guy just loves his car. He's going to say wild things about his car. He's going to be a know-it-all about his car. In the end, that doesn't affect me. It used to affect me. Let me be clear. I had some Corvette and Porsche and BMW and Ferrari and different conversations over the years where I was staring at the guy knowing he was wrong. And he just said it he knew he was right. And I couldn't let it go. And it cost me business. And it cost me probably friendships. And it cost me whatever, a good business relationship. And so, hey, look, man, it's not worth it. It just isn't. You just kind of smile and go, okay. I mean, I've shared this before. The all-time one for me was when this guy had a Porsche 911 with an interior that literally 2 doors down his neighbor had. And he's like, oh, I talked to the guy at the dealership. This is the only interior like this in Nevada. I'm like, there's literally one 2 doors down. We take care of another one in the next neighborhood. This guy over here. And I'm going, he wants to believe it. At the time, I didn't have the maturity to let him believe it. Now it's like, hey, man, it is what it is.
And kind of one of the things I kind of started learning was, these guys, in order to get that vehicle, have to know something about something, right? Like, so in their world, they probably are. And I think that really came into impact with me as, going into business with a doctor. And in his world, he's king.
Yep.
So it translates into other aspects of his life, which was business with me, where that did not quite work, right? Like, there's a lot of that where I realized, okay, well, these people that own these cars, I mean, there's a reason they're that way. And part of me as being a service-based business and detailing was to just accept their personality, accept them for who they are, and guide them in the direction that was going to be best to handle their needs. When they got to that point of these conversations and they weren't happy, I never did well at keeping the business ever.
It's tough.
It got to those points where it was just over because I wasn't going to handle it. And I didn't know how to handle it, I don't think. So hearing this stuff, there's a lot of people that will learn and gain some valuable information on it.
And remember this, not everybody who's ultra successful acts this way. It's still a small percentage.
Wow.
Right? I mean, we met with one of your clients when I was there. That guy's not like that. He's like, hey, I want this car. Can you put a coating on this? He wasn't going to sit there and tell you what coating to use so again, what you're saying is right? When you have success in something, you start to be opinionated about everything. But the smartest, successful people are only opinionated about the things they know about. The rest of the time, they're like, hey, my landscaper's great. This guy over here is great. Love my pool guy. They're out. I learned that from them, right? It's one of the reasons I operate my life the way I do. I mean, inside hyperCLEAN, we operate this way. How do we hire someone who knows more than us, right? That's what the smartest people do. But inside this subset of smart people are the guys you're talking about, the doctor that knows everything, the lawyer that knows everything, the business owner that knows everything, and they're tough clients to deal with. If you just operate on, I'm going to back out of a tough situation, I'm going to say my piece in a very polite way, I'm going to say, hey, man, wish it worked that way, and kind of walk away and get out of there before it gets heated, you'd be surprised. Some of them are going to call you back. Some are not. Usually you've dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
But some are going to call you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great talk. Great talk. We'll see everybody next week.
All right, guys.